The Salvation Army has a right to beat the drum, the tambourines, banjo to make the people come. So come join our army and get a gospel gun and shoot it at the devil if you want to see him run. Salvation Army has a right to beat the drum, the tambourine, the banjo to make the people come. Come join our army and get a gospel gun and shoot it at the devil if you want to see him run.
This is what people think of when they think of the Salvation Army are these kettles at Christmas time. But it's actually a lot more than that. Hello, my name is Jessica Lance and I'm a filmmaker. This is my family, and there are many Salvation Army officers in this photo. My grandparents up front. My parents, Salvation Army officers' kids, officer kids, but not Salvationist. My cousin Allison works for the Salvation Army. This is Aunt Norma Jean's book. Aunt Norma Jean and my cousin Allison, Steve, and Michael in uniform. Oh my gosh, that's Jeff Schultz. Wow. Okay, so this is my aunt. This is my Aunt Norma Jean conducting a wedding. It looks like she might be singing right now, I'm not sure. But it looks like she's conducting a wedding. And this is Jeff Schultz, who's my old boss at the Salvation Army. I worked for him in media ministries. Nana and Charlie, retired officers. Jimmy Cocker is an officer kid and my friend. My Uncle Jerry works for the Salvation Army. Christy Lance, my cousin. Uncle Al, Nana and Pop-Pop. There's my cousin John Nags. Uncle Jim, Territorial Commander. And then Aunt Carolyn, Territorial Commander. So this is out of this picture. This is the Lance side of the family. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 officers. 6 people who have worked or work right now with the Salvation Army in some other way. And then this side, the hillside, we have officers, 1, 2, 3, 4 officers, and 1, 2, 3 people who work or have worked with the Salvation Army in some way. I'm Steve Lance's daughter. You know, Steve.
Okay.
Don's
Steve
brother.
was always out
Yeah.
west or somewhere.
Yeah.
He was always far away. So we didn't know Steve well.
No. He moved to California like early
Years
20s.
ago, yeah.
So I've been kind of conflicted about the Salvation Army in many ways because I don't agree with all of their politics, but at the same time, they have done a lot of really great things for a lot of great people, and I've seen that happen. I'm making this documentary to get some answers to a few questions I've had about the Salvation Army as an organization, as a religion, and as a part of my family.
Oh, hey, we're family.
Yes, I love it.
This is my granddaughter, Jessica. Come with me.
William Booth was a Methodist preacher, and he used to hold meetings in the church. But then he got so interested in the poor people on the streets that he would go out on the streets to hold his meetings, and then he'd bring the poor people into the meetings. So he began to have his own church outside, and he said, "We'll be like an army, and I'll call us the Salvation Army."
The Salvation Army they're first and foremost a church.
The Lord reigns. Amen. Let the nations tremble. He sits enthroned between the cherubim. Let the earth shake. Praise the Lord in Zion. He is exalted over all nations. Let them praise your great and awesome name. He is holy.
My King is the King of Israel. Amen. He's the King of righteousness.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
He's the King of the ages.
Yes. Come on.
He's the King of glory.
I'm talking
He's
about.
the King of heavens.
Yeah.
He's the King of kings
Yeah.
and the Lord of lords.
Hallelujah. Amen.
That is my King.
And here's our chapel. Where all our services on Sunday are held. We do a lot of activities here. You can see just this equipment is everywhere.
The people don't know that we are a church, that we're not just a service center, but we are a church first and foremost. And I don't know why that is.
I know the reason. Would you like me to tell
Yes,
you the
please.
reason?
I need to know.
Evangeline Booth and early Salvationists wore their uniform all the time. They wore their hats that said the Salvation Army, and they were out in the streets doing things for people. They were always out in the public view. And so everybody knew who we were, and they trusted us because they could see us. We don't go out in our uniforms. Everybody hides, and they put their uniform on when they get to the Corps or they get to the headquarters. They don't come in their uniform to show people that we're out there. They hide. So that's why they don't know who we are. It's our own fault.
Honestly, I don't think the Army cares whether we're in the media or not. As long as we're getting to the people and lives are getting saved. And
Did you know that the Salvation Army is a church? And, you know, they meant it for something bad, and we're saying, yay, yeah, we are, you know. We don't say, you know, you have to accept our beliefs first. But without our beliefs, we wouldn't be doing what we do.
Are you taking pictures?
We'll start over here.
Now, as a married woman, quite often in the Salvation Army, our roles are identified by what our husband's roles are. So Dawn is the divisional commander, therefore I am the associate divisional commander and the director of women's ministries.
And I know that there were appointments that my dad was given and my mother was without an appointment, and she just did his paperwork and did his typing and always was able to just keep a good spirit about her and never was individually recognized for her gifting.
the men are most supposed to take care of the business aspect. They're supposed to, you know, do the sermons and make sure the core is running. And the women do, you know, like congregational meals and home league. And
I think that pigeonholing men into this role and women into this role is over. I think it has to be over.
The Salvation Army gives women the opportunity, an equal opportunity, to be leaders.
I know that the general of the Salvation Army now, the person who's the general now, even said last year that he's even pushing women more than ever before. He wants to have a woman who's a divisional commander and the husband's the associate, which would be totally radical.
I know now that they have, instead of the divisional commander and his wife, it is now the divisional commander and the associate divisional commander, which happens to be his wife.
So in order to be really equal, it would be based on both persons' abilities, not just the husband's.
And it used to be if you got married to another officer, the woman would take the man's rank. And it could have been a lower rank, but that was more uniform. And
as you notice with our young couple here, he's the lieutenant and she's the major. Well, that's something new. In the old days, she would have gone to lieutenant or Mrs. Lieutenant. And nowadays, the women are not Mrs. Lieutenant Colonel. They're lieutenant colonels on their own right.
it was after a survey that was made throughout the world asking what people thought. And so the results came in, and apparently worldwide women wanted their own rank. They didn't want to be called Mrs. anymore, which is exactly opposite of me. I am so proud to be Mrs. to my husband that I wish that it had never changed.
He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners. This is the word of the Lord.
It's different in other churches, for instance, like the Baptist Church or the Nazarene, where you're the pastor's wife. You're not a minister.
And of course, since the beginning of the Salvation Army, the women were ordained along with the men. They had full license to conduct funerals or conduct weddings, to preach, do anything that a minister would do. In fact, until just recently, there could not be an officer couple with one ordained and one not ordained. Both of them had to be ordained. And if you met someone after your ordination, you were still single, and you wanted to marry them, they would have to go into the Salvation Army Training College to become an officer before they would allow the marriage.
Can you hear me? Here we are, International Headquarters, Salvation Army. I'm here visiting London with my friend Kathy, and we went to the Tate Modern, which is right across the bridge here, and then all of a sudden I walked by and there's International Headquarters. There it is, right there. We've got glass windows, lots of tourists, wind, and not sure if this is the original location where the first building was, but obviously they've rebuilt it if it is. Looks like it's closed. There's no Salvationists today.
A Salvation Army officer is considered a self-employed person. And as such, with the house being given, the car, and other benefits that are not in our paycheck, that it would actually lessen how much money we would pay in taxes, therefore lessen how much money we would get in Social Security when we retired.
Married Salvation Army officer ladies don't get paid.
As a female, it would be nice to receive a paycheck with my name on it.
The husband gets the check, and if he's kind and if he likes you, then he'll give you an allowance. But you know, it worries me a bit sometimes because I think, what if you're having, you know, words with your husband? I mean, you know, we are human. All right, we're Christians and blah blah blah, but
We're not in this business for the money, but it would be nice to receive my own reimbursement, you know, my own compensation per se.
How long do you think it'll be until your wife gets her own paycheck?
There is something about knowing that you have earned your paycheck, and when you don't get one, you know, what are you working for? You know, and how much are you willing to work without having that recognition?
You know from the get-go that this is what you're getting into. You know, women who stop coming to the Corps, they're like, well, I don't get a paycheck. Why do I gotta work? Well, you knew this coming in. Like, what's your problem? You can still get paid. I do get that maybe they should separate the paychecks, because I think that's the root of most of women's frustration with the Army.
it makes you feel as if you're not worth anything in a way, because we're not getting paid. All right, so we get an allowance from our husbands when they get the check, supposedly.
Well, most of the time, people think we work for the airlines, or that you're a cop.
Had that happen. I've had people hand me my trash when I go to the restroom in the back of the plane.
No, they're Salvation Army officers. Oh, you mean the red box? No.
Because the Salvation Army, they wear the uniform. No other
Yes.
churches do that.
Yes, I know. And in a lot of ways, I think it's good because everybody knows who you are when they see you with your uniform and epaulets. And
My epaulets?
Yeah.
These say, this tells who you are in the congregation, and I am a soldier in the Salvation Army. So when you see me, you know that I'm not an officer, and therefore you cannot request that I do way too much work.
Oh, yes,
Just
we
a
can.
little bit too much
Never
work.
underestimate our ability.
See? So it means I hold positions like working in the social services department or working in the office at the ARC, jobs like that.
Okay.
And in the congregation, I would lead songs or read scriptures.
Teach Sunday school.
Teach Sunday school.
You know, we used to have to wear the caps and the hats, and the women were always in skirts and tunics.
We have much better hair now.
With the main
We don't have to wear hats at all.
Yeah.
Actually, the uniform
The
is
hat
going with
hair
the
is
main
gone.
hose and heels, which I'm supposed to wear heels. I can't wear heels anymore. It's uncomfortable. I find it's, and I was just saying, I just pulled my hose up and put my fingernail through. I'm like, oh, this is very practical, isn't it?
But so you think that maybe people are treating it as like, work. So
I
when
think
they're
it
when
is.
they're wearing the uniform, they're at work. And so when you're at the grocery store, you shouldn't also have to be at work.
Well, I think people don't want to be confronted as we used to be. We used to be so proud. We would be thrilled if people would come back with us to the Corps and hear what we had to say and do.
As a Salvation Army officer, this is my priestly garb, and it identifies me as hopefully a Christian, that people will see the Salvation Army uniform and know that I'm a Christian, and which has a downside as well, because it also means that I have to act like a Christian when I'm wearing it.
But I think the uniform really lends itself to getting us into doors that we wouldn't be able to get into.
Strangers will stop and even pour out their hearts to you.
Mm-hmm.
If we're
you're in uniform.
just because they see the uniform, and maybe they related to somebody they met even in the Second World War. They gave them a donut or something. But for some reason, there's a connection, and it's the uniform that does it.
It means peace. It means peace. We're at war with the devil to make peace on this earth, to make things good.
So it is a war, though.
Yeah, definitely. A war against sin.
Every corps has its ministry side, preaching on Sundays, church throughout the week, youth programs, and then you also have the whole social services side of the Salvation Army at each corps.
Emergency food pantry, as you can see, Ford started making bags because our pantry is open from 1 to 3. Well, actually, at the end of the month, it's our busiest time because that's when people's food stamps run out. They don't get them until the new month, so
they get this whole bag?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who expect it, but the people who are grateful, it's totally worth the effort, for sure. And back here is our kitchen. We have a Meals on Wheels program. We deliver meals to homebound senior citizens. Actually, the wait list is very long. What is it? 500 people are on our wait list, Fran?
We delivered to about 340 right now.
We delivered to 340. We're hoping to expand it as we move to the Croc Center to a wider spectrum of the program. Fran and Jose, very lovely people. The kitchen we use for when we serve, we have a Wednesday night family meal night with our after-school kids, so we serve them dinner. For this building, kettles has a lot to do with our operating budget. Whatever we raise during the Christmas season is our annual budget for the year. Plus, people just donate on the fly. One time we had a guy come in, he just donated $5,000 just because, People love the Salvation Army as much as unknown as it is. People know about it.
Yeah.
His baby's due like in a week.
Is that
That's That's his wife, Kathy.
Probably very strong individual women, probably not married maybe, but strong in themselves, have played more a leading part or an individual part than perhaps we as married women.
Single women officers have a much better opportunity to do more things. You get DCs, divisional commanders and so on, who are women. But married women, no, not so much.
Yeah, that's interesting to me how having a husband taints your professional career
I know,
in the army.
Well, look at, General Burroughs, when Eva Burroughs was the general. I mean, she was amazing, but she said, I have to be a single woman to do this.
As a single officer, you go in charge of a corps, and sometimes you're on your own. So you are doing the same work as two officers would, in a married couple.
And as a single officer, especially in charge of a corps alone, you would have nobody to share that burden with, and that would be a very heavy one.
That means all of the decisions are you. That means preaching every Sunday is you. All of the youth programs and finding leaders, it's all you. That's why the husband and wife team is so important. Not to say that single officers can't do or don't do the same amount of work and they do it wonderfully. I think that they're just challenged in different ways.
If you're a single officer, a single woman officer, you get treated more, in a sense, as a man's status. But it's still very difficult to break into the men's world.
This is awesome. No, it's awesome.
The Salvation Army began in an era which was continuous many thousands of years before, that women were not considered to be equal to men in their intellect or their abilities to lead.
The founder, William Booth's wife, Catherine, was a very strong woman preacher. She was for women's rights, and women had an equality to men and a capability that what men could do, women could do as well.
She wrote a wonderful book a little later on in her early marriage called Female Ministry.
Female Ministry, written by Catherine Booth. So basically it's this kind of feminist manifesto of the time of how women should be able to have the same opportunities in preaching as men.
Well, it's all partly women's ministry. I mean, the only thing that deals with women entirely is what we call our women's social. And we had a home here in Portland where pregnant women could go and stay there until their babies arrived if they didn't have any family to look after them. But I don't think we have as much of what we call women's ministry. I think it is all ministry.
Now I've asked Jim and Carolyn if as we begin this meeting together they would introduce to us their families, the Nags and the Lance family, and their friends, but I'm afraid it might be everyone here. So this could take a little while. But Jim and Carolyn, why don't you come and just, we warmly welcome the families, the Lance and the Nags families, and we want Jim and Carolyn to introduce them to us as we begin this afternoon.
Thank you. We weren't sure if actually the whole family would stand, so we do have some friends in the back that said they would stand as family just in case they can stand up. But if you would please, family members, you know we love you, you know who you are. Would you stand up and then we'll go through we'll tell everybody who you are. So please, here we go. Come on, the masses. There's some more. Come on, we know your names.
One of the things I absolutely love is when my guys say to me, do you remember when we were stationed in such and such a place? And there's a very interesting that takes place, and this happened to me when my parents were officers, and I know this happened to Carolyn too, is it turns into be even a family ministry when you see the positive outcomes of all this. It's extraordinary.
I'm finding with my children and their upbringing in the Salvation Army that we have much more to talk about because we were connected, wholly connected through the Salvation Army.
Raising 3 children in the Army, wherever we are stationed is basically their home because they really don't have any roots anywhere.
You take your children because you go to church all the time. So your children are brought up in the church.
Your kids learn from you, and they get out in the world and they see these different avenues that they can go, and they try them.
And you trust that something that's in your life will be, the youngsters in your family will cherish and take with them when they go, and hopefully will live a life that is pleasing to them and pleasing to God.
Why did you decide to become a Salvation Army officer? You grew up in it?
I grew up in the Salvation Army. My parents were officers, my grandparents were officers.
I love my life. I grew up in the Army, and so I don't know anything else.
I've attended the Army all my life. I was raised in the Army.
Do you think that a lot of officers' kids become officers because they don't know the secular world? They don't understand it, they don't feel comfortable in it?
Yes and no. I think yes to people who had a really good experience and see that their parents love it and that they grew up, with a really strong faith. I believe that people, officer kids who become officers, sometimes it's for the right reasons. They've gone out to the world. For example, my friend is an officer's kid. He got married and he owned a home and he has 2 kids, and then, was living his life and then chose to become an officer. He definitely saw the aspect of the world and then, kind of got resaved. And I think it's really good for officer kids to leave the Army because it gives you, in my sense, a bigger appreciation of it and what it did for your family and how you feel about God. And, that stuff is like embedded in you at birth.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's hard to shake. It's hard to shake the Army.
Somehow we found a home in the Salvation Army. And I think people look for a place where they're comfortable, where they can be themselves, where they can grow. And we have both found that the Salvation Army is the place where not only it's our spiritual home, but our friends are in the Army and our kids are in the Army. And, it's just a beautiful fellowship for us.
Yeah, that's true.
It's unique. You won't find it in any other church. There's just a bond that you have in the Army that you can't find anywhere else. You see another Salvationist, it's like they're your family. You don't find that in other churches.
Well, I think in the Salvation Army, there is a place for everybody, no matter if you're 6 or, 66 or 96. There is a place and an opportunity of service in the ministry.
So it is in the worldly sense, it is a job, and yet it doesn't feel like we're going to work every day.
I think this is great what you're doing.
Yeah,
I think it's important. I think it's important for you to understand this whole aspect of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's also important for you to understand this aspect of our life. We have our own language and our own life, but I think it's important for you to understand what we do and where your family has come from. And
Well, it's been quite a discovery.
I'm
I do
sure.
feel like it's given me, I'm sitting down with you, and we
Yes.
never sit down.
I know, this is lovely. I know.
So it's just been really cool experience to actually meet my family. And I came into this project being Salvation Army is trash. They do all this bad stuff, and they have they just control people, and everyone's a pawn. And I don't feel that way anymore.
That's good.
I feel that it's that there's some real joy that comes out of your lives.
I think when we stop asking questions, I think that we lose something. Then we question all the time, and we live here, and we're fully submersed,
Right.
and we still say, "What? Where is the this is injustice?" And then sometimes they say, "Okay, you're right," and other times they
Right.
say, "Okay, this is how it is."
Right.
And so we have to decide, okay, are we on board with you, or are we out? Well, do we love our ministry more than that? Yes, we do. Do we love our ministry more than we have to wear, we can't wear jeans anymore to the dining room.
Yeah.
Of course we do. Okay, so that's not as important.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to question. You have to question your own faith. You have to question, your church. You have to question the elders in the church, or you don't learn.
Absolutely.
You
And bad things don't change.
Correct.
Because now as a woman, you can wear pants when it's cold.
Yes,
if
you
you
can.
want.
I think my mother missed she missed the pants era. She would have been so happy. She hated those pantyhose.